Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynn@pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hello, welcome to the show. I'm going to try not to cough, although I have a feeling I'm not going to succeed in that effort. It's January 15th, a Wednesday. I'll be joined later by senior writer, I was going to call him Jared again. I started with that. This is how out of it I am. Ryan Deto, excuse me. Always fun to talk to him. Also, just want to give you a heads up that on tomorrow's show, I'm so excited about this. At the top of the show, we will have the most mind-blowing magician I have ever seen, and I'm sure thousands, tens of thousands of other people would say the same. Derek Hughes will be joining us. I think a lot of people first saw him on America's Got Talent, where he rose to the final 10, I believe. He's amazing, and I don't even know if there are still tickets left, even though he's got a long run here. He's here till February 16th at Liberty Magic on Liberty Avenue. Very small venue, but you won't want to miss this. He's just an amazing showman. There is a review of his show in Pittsburgh City Paper that is on the stands today, if you want to know more. Just saying. So a lot of stuff going on, and will keep me from having to maybe talk as much. Okay. I can't believe it. I've been sick, and now it seems like I'm getting a cold. So, I did not watch much of the debate last night because, frankly, I find them stultifying, and I also find the moderators usually maddening, the questions maddening, the format maddening. The attention paid to just totally unimportant events like, did Bernie Sanders tell Elizabeth Warren in a private meeting that he didn't think a woman could be elected president in 2020? You know what? I don't care. That is a story that CNN was pushing, and so you're watching the debate on CNN, and that's where the debate goes. This is when the world is in conflagration. We are looking at an impeachment trial of a sitting president, and every day there is more and more news that deserves our attention. And instead, the big story after the debate is Elizabeth Warren didn't shake Bernie's hand after the debate. We are a pathetic people. The media serves us ill, and I've had it. And I also think that the more that we overexpose in many ways these candidates, and when we do expose them, we don't do it in the right way. I'm just sick and tired of it all. I really am. I did notice one thing in the time that I watched, and that's that something I had noticed before, but this time I actually wrote it down so I would remember. Biden often says, when he's speaking of Obama and something President Obama did, he doesn't say he always says we, as if Obama was joined at the hip with Biden. So I've noticed that before, and I've thought, come on, I get it. You want to ride his coattails. It's why black Americans are enthralled with you, apparently. But last night, he actually said at one point, and I think I have this right because I raced to write it down. I can't remember what preceded it, but then there was a but, he said. But when we were elected president. And there it was, finally. When we were elected president. And obviously this is a talking point that his campaign has drilled into his head, that he is to take credit for the entire Obama presidency, and by conflating Obama with him. And sometimes that seems to work better than others, and I would argue that this from last night is when it was glaringly ludicrous. Yes, but when we were elected president, I had not Joe Biden was elected president? So far in his dreams. Jesus, God. You know what? Up to here. I am joining the, I think, majority of Americans who's had it up to here with our media, our politics, our unseriousness, our corruption, I really am sort of finished. I'm sorry. I don't know what that means in terms of doing a show like this. It's why you'll probably see more magicians on the show in the future. God, I'm sorry. Did you watch the Jeopardy thing? I did. It was the three biggest Jeopardy winners up against each other for how many nights was that? 4 nights? 5 nights? Seeing who was the greatest winner of all time, and it was I was a little surprised that it was no contest. The one who is smartest, knows the most, and has extraordinary quick reaction and recall is Ken Jennings. He just ran going away, although I have to say, he could have lost last night if, what's his name? A guy I decided last night I don't like. I've always tried to like him, and I don't like him, and I keep forgetting his name. James Holzhauer. Because last night he did something that I thought was disgusting by making fun of the third person, the third big winner, Brad Rutter, who has not done well in this. Holzhauer is just, to see people who are so competitive, you can see, just so competitive. It's I find it off-putting, frankly, but that's just the female in me, I suppose. But Holzhauer did come on at the end and could have beaten, not that any of you care, could have beaten Jennings if he'd gotten the final Jeopardy answer correctly. And he didn't. And I did. The only one who got it right was Jennings and me. At least that was in my house. And mine was a guess, but it was an educated guess. It's who, other than a title character, has the most speeches in any Shakespeare play. Who, other than a title character, has the most speeches. And it's not even like I know all Shakespeare's plays. And I'm, whatever. But I got it right. Because I was thinking, who is like a huge character, but not the title character? And you know what the answer was? Iago. That's what I figured. Anyway, so that for us Jeopardy freaks, this was this was nirvana, and Ken Jennings is really impressive. So he won $1 million to add to the other millions he now has. Has Nancy, we're on first name terms, has she announced, because she's supposed to do it now, has Nancy told us who the impeachment managers are yet? Because she's supposed to do that at 10 o'clock. If any of you are trying to ascertain that, let me know, because it's hard for me to sort of pay attention to that while I'm doing the show. I see she's speaking live, and she does announce the impeachment managers, and they are, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, no, that's Will announced. Okay, so let me know. I was trying to think who the most the people who've done the most damage to our democracy, if you were to rank them, are. And I think history will say, and it's all men, by the way, and it's all white men, okay? I'm just saying that seems to come up all the time these days, that we're finally waking up to when you let just not even half of the population have all the power. You're depriving ourselves, of such talent and brain power and all that stuff. And when a certain subset, like white men, think they own everything, they're lazy and they're not good. They're not as good as they can be. And I'm not tarring all you guys. I'm not. But I mean, anytime there is that level of privilege historically, I mean, throughout history, you don't get the best. And you end up in places like we are right now. I forgot what I was saying. I went off on that white man riff. Oh, who do you think, historically, rank the people who killed American democracy? Because I think we're potentially headed in that direction. I actually would put Roger Ailes at the top, I think. An evil genius who had an agenda and masterfully carried it out. And we see the results now. A nation that doesn't, totally divided, that is not even able to agree on observable fact. Roger Ailes, who figured out a formula to entice mostly white men to entice white men who are in power to view the world in a certain way, to trust. I mean, just the cynical marketing of Fox News when it began. And now I'm sorry. I'm pleading sickness that I'm. We report, you decide. Is that what they first said? Yeah, I mean, which is BS. They are, I think, have brainwashed a sizable portion of the population. They have given us the current Republican Party. Also on my list of who killed democracy is Mitch McConnell. What a vile, vile character he is. So, anyway, that's all I'm saying. Well, that's not all I'm saying. What am I talking about? I'm talking here. I'm going to say more. I actually have an obit of the day. And I actually bring up the obit as part of my focus thus far on privilege. And in this case, white privilege. That we do not acknowledge. I mean, we're starting to acknowledge, finally. Starting. All of us. I mean, once you become aware of the privilege that comes of being encased in this pale skin, it's hard not to see it. I mean, constantly. Just with an extraordinary consistency. Anyway. This obituary is in the New York Times today. It notes the passing of a woman named Gladys Bourdain, who I had never heard of. She died at the age of 85. The reason she is, I don't think she would have gotten a Times obit, even though she had worked much of her life as a New York Times copy editor. But I think that she still would not have gotten the coveted, not that anyone wants to die, but if you do die, you want the New York Times to note your passing. That means you must have been somebody important. But the obit clearly shows that Gladys Bourdain's importance had less to do with her own career than a little bit of white privilege networking that she did on behalf of her son, who then became a huge global star. Without the connections that come with being white and succeeding into certain positions of power and crossing paths with other people who are on that trajectory, the possibility of good luck happening to you is just astronomical compared to somebody who doesn't, by virtue of their skin or maybe their zip code, have access to the same kind of maybe 1 degree of separation from movers and shakers and people who can get things done. So here's a woman who's a copy editor at the New York Times. That's pretty cool. And most of her obit, though, is about her son and what she did for him. It turns out that at the time she was copy editor, there was a reporter there named Esther Fine. I want to point out something else that's clear here, too, that might bypass others. Because I'm a Jew, I recognize fellow Jews. Esther Fine, if she ain't a Jew, I will shoot myself right here, okay? So there's this reporter, Esther Fine, who's Jewish. I never thought Anthony Bourdain was a Jew, although I thought he looked like a Jew. But Bourdain? Turns out his mom, Gladys, who's now dead, is clearly a Jew. So he was a Jew. Her name was Gladys Saxman, and her father's name was Milton Saxman, right? Okay. These are Jewish people. White Jews and capable, competent. So there is, I just want to say that Esther Fine, this reporter at the New York Times, happened to marry, at the time, a guy named David Remnick. Now, that name might jog somebody. Well, I've heard that name, David Remnick. David Remnick. Yeah, well, he had just not only married Esther, but he had achieved the vaunted position of being the editor of the New Yorker magazine. Still is. Now, Gladys Bourdain, the Times copy editor, had this son, Anthony, who was working as a chef at the time and was writing stuff on the side. And he had been struggling to get a piece that he wrote, like a magazine piece, published. And no one would even look at it, because who was he? He was nobody. And so his mom, Gladys Bourdain, walked over to Esther Fine's desk after Esther married the new editor of the New Yorker magazine. And Gladys said, well, I'll do it in Esther's words, because she's quoted in the obit. So Gladys came over and she said, you know, so your husband's got a new job. Got this new job. Yeah, obviously she would know her husband got this new job. It seems like an odd thing to say. And then Anthony's mother said this: I hate to sound like a pushy mom, but I'm telling you this with my editor's hat on, not my mother's hat. My son wrote this piece. It is really good and it's really interesting, but nobody will look at it. Nobody will call him back. Nobody will give it a second look. Could you possibly put it in your husband's hands? There's that ability to connect. Obviously, Esther put it in her husband's hands, and he thought it was great. He published the piece, and Anthony Bourdain had a book contract within days, and the rest, of course, is history. The impeachment managers are Adam Schiff, unsurprisingly, Zoe Lofgren, Hakeem Jeffries, Val B. Demings, why don't I know these people, Jason Crow, Sylvia Garcia, and Jerry Nadler. There you have it. Good luck. So the article expanded turned into Kitchen Confidential, which made Anthony Bourdain, and then the next thing CNN comes calling and he ends up with a TV show and all that stuff. He'd still be like in some grimy kitchen somewhere in New York, probably, if he didn't have those connections that come to people so often. I'm just saying, so many people who become successful don't acknowledge these little serendipitous connections that happen. But the fact that they're in a place where such connections can be made speaks mightily of the privilege that some get at birth. And, I mean, through no fault of their own. I mean, at birth, you get lucky, right? In your skin, in your socioeconomic status, in your genetic inheritance, in all these kinds of ways. But I've often thought, because I also had this kind of privilege in my life, I have often said that if I had not been born to two highly educated white people, and given all of the kinds of legs up that you get from being born into a secure, safe, the sky's the limit kind of environment, I almost didn't make it as it was. I was such a neurotic, anxious wreck. But if I were born instead, and I've often said this, to poor, black, ghettoized people with the same intelligence that my parents had, and the same kind of ambition, and the same values, the odds that I would have made it out, I think, are negligible. Knowing my makeup, I can't imagine. And I just want to weep when I think of the cruelty and the capriciousness of life. And I get angry when people who are successful, who have found success, and I'm not saying I didn't have a lot to do with my own success. I brought certain talents. I worked hard, blah, 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 blah. But I had a head start, big head start. And people are not inclined to acknowledge that. So, anyway, so when her son Anthony committed suicide in 2018 at the age of 61, I guess the privilege kind of ended at that point. This woman, who was then 83, his mother, memorialized him with a tattoo of his name on her wrist. Believe me, an old Jewish woman getting a tattoo is like so bizarre, but she did. The man she married, Pierre Bourdain, it was not in the picture. Okay, so we got the impeachment managers. Sylvia Garcia is a congresswoman from Texas. Zoe Lofgren is from California. Hakeem Jeffries, New York. Val Demings from Florida. And Jason Crow, Colorado. If you don't know who some of those folks are, as I did not. Excuse me. Milton has sent me something. The 7 secrets of highly successful people. 1, private school. I didn't have that. 2, legacy Ivy admission. I didn't have that. I had a legacy admission to a good school. 3, nepotism hire. I didn't have that. 4, seed capital from family. I would say I was always buttressed by knowing that I had, money behind me. You can't imagine the anxiety that is lifted when you know that there's that level of financial security, even if it's not owned by you, right? 5, club memberships, didn't have that. And 6, personal assistant, nanny, ghostwriter, didn't have any of those. I didn't have a lot of these. Journalists who ask, what's your secret, and uncritically publish the answer. Yeah. No. Nope. But that is the way it works, right? Yeah. You take care of your own. And so that privilege just keeps growing and growing and growing, and the networks are created so that in my life, yeah, I find that I can, drop names because my father knew, my mother met, my mother played bridge with, and then you start seeing all of this is what white privilege looks like, right?
Oh, I got a headset.
You got a headset, Ryan, and well, I'm glad you could come. You still got a toothache?
It doesn't really hurt that bad. It's just
Something's wrong, huh?
Yeah. Oh, I can feel it with my finger. It's like a big cavity back there. But they rescheduled. So for later today. It's fine.
Yeah. I got good teeth.
You do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, if you're on TV.
Well,
you have
I
good
was
teeth.
no, I don't know, but I was talking about one of certain inheritances that you have nothing to do with,
Right.
that you just get by accident of birth.
Right.
And when my father died at 86, he had every single one of his teeth
Oh my gosh.
in his head.
Wow.
My mom, who's 97, has every single tooth.
Yeah, you're also going to live forever, apparently. 97.
No, I'm obviously pushing back against that, but yeah, but teeth,
Right.
jeez,
Yeah, maybe that's a sign
got
of
some teeth.
maybe that's a sign of like longevity and just general longevity
Well,
in
they
life.
say that dental health is definitely a
Yeah, like an
harbinger
indicator.
of overall health. You got to take care of your teeth. And the reason I think also that I have great teeth is my mom's father was a dentist.
Oh, I see.
So she's like really
Yeah,
serious
yeah.
about it.
All my grandparents are dead, so they didn't make. I think my grandpa lived the longest, till 80. So we'll see what.
But on
happens
the
for me.
other hand, my father's family,
Yeah.
both his parents were dead in their early 50s.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And his brothers.
Yeah, but that was like in
as well.
1700, right, or something. That was like the normal life expectancy back then.
All right, all right. I think it was their diet and their, they had, well, it doesn't matter. Jeez. If they were here today, they would have lived longer. My dad wouldn't have lived without a pacemaker.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
technology.
that is technology
Yeah, sure.
and other stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised my grandfather lived as long as he did because he like drank like
Copious amounts.
this
huh?
much of whiskey like every single day and was like really out of shape. So
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of shocked he lived that long anyway.
And was he a smoker?
He smoked when he was younger.
Yeah.
And then he stopped.
Me too.
Yeah.
Okay. Listen, anything you want to talk about? I want to talk about.
Debate? Did you already talk about the debate? I'm just all depressed. I'm just depressed.
Tell me.
Lynn.
No, I said I'm done. I'm done with the debates.
We have to stop
No, it's
with the debates.
because
they're
the
useless.
debates are awful.
They're
totally
awful and useless.
The moderators are useless. I'm sick of the whole goddamn thing, and I say just F it.
Same.
I did note that one thing that was said, I didn't watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
But Biden has this thing where he conflates Obama's successes totally with himself.
Right.
So he always says instead of he,
Right.
speaking about, he says we.
Right.
Right. And last night he had one of those moments, but it was ludicrous because I forget what he said, blah, 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 blah. But when we were elected president,
Right. I mean, Obama. Yeah. I think
no one
I think that's part of his
voted
strategy.
for Obama because Biden was his vice.
No, definitely
when
not.
we
Obama
were
could've-
elected president,
Obama probably didn't even need a vice president, honestly, on the ticket because he was just a force of nature in terms of a campaign,
Yeah.
right? Like both of his campaigns were just forces of nature. There's nothing the Republicans could do to win, in my opinion. They could have nominated Jesus, and like I still Obama, maybe probably not Jesus.
well, I don't know. Okay. No, so we're in agreement. I mean, the fact that the big story is
the spat between
is this
Sanders
silly
and Warren.
little, who gives a damn if he said it? I mean, that might have been his. I really think. Who knows? It could also be that I don't care. It is of no import at all to me.
Right.
None.
No, I mean, it's one of those things where, like, yeah, you could.
We're about to impeach there's a trial about to happen, and that's what we're talking about.
Trump is under impeachment for basically colluding with the Ukrainian government to try to help him in an election. Yeah. He's leading a lawsuit right now that would, which would end Obamacare, which would strip millions of Americans of healthcare and get rid of the pre-existing conditions.
Hey, if you're going to start on a litany of the horrors that he's up to right now, we'll be here for the next 5 years.
But there's just so many things. And honestly, and I know this is like every time we come on the show, we talk about the same thing, but the way the political media handles these campaigns and everything is just the most depressing thing in the world. I mean, there's a lot of, obviously millennials take a lot of shit, and that's fine, whatever. And but throughout my life as a millennial, there's been so many what I call disillusionments, right? And so I grew up thinking that the people who were elected to office were exceptional, and they were good, and that's why they were running the country and all these things. Obviously, so many factors have thrown that out the window. It has nothing to do with that. There's other things that we live in this great democracy, right? There's always been this idea that we were taught that America is like one of the world's best democracies, one of history's best democracies.
Ain't it a bitch when the scales fall from your eyes? Ain't it a bitch?
It's awful. And you learn all these things and you're like, oh wait, no, we're just like we don't live in this highly educated, highly informed time where we're all going down to the Greek forum and like learning about like how to best what policies best can help lift up our society and can help better our thing. We live in especially right now, especially the last like 10 years.
Just corrupted as hell.
Well, we live in like a reality TV version
we do.
of politics, of politics,
That's right.
of elections, of everything. And there's no reason that Trump is president of our country, right? Because he's a reality TV star.
We are totally, thank you, corporate America.
Right.
Thank you, corporate America. Thank you, our corrupted political system. Thank you, our Supreme Court, who allows money.
Right.
I mean,
Citizens United was one of the worst decisions. It will definitely go down as one of the worst decisions
ever.
Yeah.
It's like Dred Scott.
Yeah.
Citizens
it's so
United,
bad.
Dred Scott.
Yeah.
Like moments of absolute appalling stupidity.
And it's so frustrating because I think a lot of people know this, and I think a lot of liberals know this too, but it doesn't matter because the corporate media is so large and so powerful that they can manipulate our emotions. And that's exactly what this last debate was. It was all about pitting progressives against each other over an emotional thing that has nothing to do with their policies.
Yes, but it creates because they like the narrative with some, with some.
Oh yeah, and like of course their website leads with guess what? It's like fucking watching Bravo. I'm sorry, like, and I watch a lot of Bravo with my girlfriend. We love it, but it's like.
But that's pure entertainment. This is serious business, and I mean, we're doomed. I just want to say we're friggin' doomed.
It does become. I become more pessimistic every day, and it's sad because I'm a very optimistic person. I believe that we can, if we educated people enough, if we got away from it, but the powers that be are just too strong. It's impossible to stop CNN from running these gossipy stories about campaigns when they should really just be comparing. I don't know anything, literally anything. Talk about people's problems with healthcare. Talk about people's problems with housing.
We are so ill-served. Look, as you're talking about this sense of what CNN here and there. But
the worst.
Yeah, but they're saying this is this thing of America thinking we're so wonderful. And, there's been a survey of what's the best country to raise a child. Mm-hmm. Well, where do you think United States comes in? I mean, come on.
Oh, we don't have free child care. We don't even have parental leave. We don't have paid parental leave for people.
I'm surprised we came in at number 18.
Yeah.
How is that possible that we came in at 18? We should be coming in at 40.
That's still really low considering we are the 18? Richest country in the world. Shouldn't we be number one?
Well, yes, but we don't, as you say, we...
No, and
we're a joke.
And again, I think what I want listeners to really think about is, and I know we're a form of media, but we're obviously minuscule compared to CNN, but I want them to think about, stop going to CNN. Honestly, just stop. There's no reason to. There's plenty of other like websites. There's plenty of other sources, to get your news. It takes a lot more work though, right? Because it takes you going to like each one and maybe reading like 3 or 4 articles on something instead of one. But this is the perfect disinformation, system that like maintains this terrible status quo where a reality TV president, star can become the president of the United States. And it's even on shaky ground that he will lose, because we're all fighting against ourselves over absolutely nothing. And it's just really depressing and silly. And another thing about the CNN debates that really got me mad, right, is that you have this idea. One, CNN frames any kind of spending as it's going to bankrupt America. That's impossible. You can't bankrupt America. That's not possible. It's just not possible. You can't. It doesn't make any sense. It's not a business. It's not an individual.
We're already $1 trillion in debt. I want to point out. Are we bankrupt?
No.
Yeah, well, no, we're
No,
not.
because being in debt doesn't actually matter, because we have so many assets in our country that that could just like change, and it's so simplifying.
But they don't ask that question when
right. This is exactly my point.
Military
with the war. So we spend the majority of our discretionary funding, right? So the majority of funding goes to what the Republicans like to call entitlements, basically just giving people services like Medicare and Social Security.
And that's bad. Entitlement.
So that people can retire. Like
right.
Social Security allows Americans to retire. God forbid we don't want that, right?
So children can have an education
right.
or have food on their table. And we do that worse than any other supposedly developed nation.
And so let's just I think it's smart to just take those off the table. Those should always be there for Americans. And then we have discretionary spending. So that's like basically what our roads, our infrastructure, everything else. But
you know what?
The vast
Travel overseas, and then fly back in to this country.
Yeah.
And it hits you bang.
Right.
Our infrastructure in every way, we're like a third world country, guys.
Well, we're definitely just it's bad. And so we have all that, and so like 57% of that discretionary funding, the vast majority, the biggest pie piece by far, goes to military spending. But CNN never asks, is our military spending bankrupting our country, right? I mean, Trump is actively trying to escalate a war with Iran. He's doing
war is somebody gave me a quote the other day that war is like the longest running scam and really good scam that is perpetrated by rich people who get richer every time.
Right.
Every time
and so we've had these long wars. We've had inequality become worse and worse in America, and then our supposedly moderate or liberal media like CNN is asking, oh, well, giving people health care will bankrupt America. But they don't ask, bombing so-and-so will bankrupt America. Like sending more troops over to an endless war, almost 20 years now, war over with no progress, will bankrupt America. And we're supposed to believe that they're supposed to be our scion of how we learn about politics. It's a joke. It's a joke. Yeah.
Now.
I'm sad.
Take a deep breath.
Okay.
And while we're talking about media.
Right.
You tweeted something last night.
Okay.
That we're going to go local now.
Okay. What did I tweet? I tweeted a lot of things. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, man.
Can you tell me what he's gunning for WPXI?
Right.
They did a story, and it was framed in what way? This was a story about the development happening where the Civic Arena once stood, and now where the
Peterson Event Center over in Oakland, West Oakland.
Okay, so there's this development going on.
Yes,
and it's
right on the fringes,
right on the edge of the Hill District,
right,
which is the largest black neighborhood.
Yeah,
I think. Yes. Okay. How did they frame this?
So they framed it that that basically like, oh, crime in the neighborhood. But this new development is coming in too. Like, I don't know. Like, pull up my tweet actually, because I can't even recall. I was so angry when I tweeted it. You know, I can just do it if you want.
Yeah, do it. Because I did not see the. Okay, here it is.
Okay. Where's the photo?
I don't know.
Okay, let me pull it up real quick.
You'll have to do it.
Yeah.
So it's assuming that, of course, the Hill, because it's home to black people,
Right.
is dangerous.
Right.
And
Which is racist.
which is so racist. And you think
here
of
it is.
who is their audience? You know, all these people that don't live. Most of the people who are their audience do not live in the city,
No.
and they're
Which is true. Which is true of the whole region. Most of
That's
the people
right.
live outside of the city
Outside
in our
the city.
region. 2.3 million, and only
the level of
0.3 live in the
of
city.
fear of black people
Right.
and the neighborhoods
Yeah,
they live in.
right.
I mean, who hasn't been asked? I mean, I know you drive through that neighborhood, or you go to what?
I've ridden my
You
bike.
and your son. Why are you going to the Y in Homewood with your son?
Because it's the closest one to you, I assume.
It's the closest one to me, and they had a great program
Right,
there.
right.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
So anyway, this story has the title, "Despite Dangerous Neighborhood Perception, Hill Districts Cite a Massive New Developments." Okay. So this is basically framing, oh, there's massive new developments in this dangerous neighborhood. Why is that bad? That's the framing of the story. Now the actual story isn't written that way, which is fine, I guess, but that doesn't matter, right?
because people take in
just
the
share the
it's
headline.
like the headline.
Right. Yes.
That's right.
Because we
Right.
live in a social media age, so it's really more about just sharing the headline and you know, how dangerous is the Hill District?
And-
Question mark is the framing.
Well,
So there's also a ton of typos in this thing, which is kind of a joke.
So
but,
the story goes on. The actual story goes on to
Right.
say that there was more violent crime in Squirrel Hill
Right.
in 2018
Right.
than in the Hill District.
Yeah. So why would
Are
you frame
people-
the story that way? Why would you frame it? The perceptions of the Hill District are this way. This kind of framing from WPXI is asking. It's literally inviting racist responses. It's stoking racism on purpose. Like, there's no reason to say something like that. You could just write a story about how it's getting things. It's not even in the neighborhood.
Here's somebody who says, yeah, all this is clickbait for people who live in the suburbs
Right.
and the outlying counties to
Right.
comment on a neighborhood they've never set foot
Right.
in.
Right. And honestly, it's such a joke. There are thousands of people that live in the Hill District. It is, yes, it has crime. A lot of places
I
have
said
crime.
Squirrel Hill
Yes.
has crime.
It's perfectly.
It's considered one of the most wonderful neighborhoods in the city.
Maybe in the whole country. I would
everybody
argue.
freaks about
Yes.
it that see it.
And so it's just one of those things where it's like, why does the media do this? We act like, and then it's so funny because so many people are like, oh, trolls are dividing us, and Bernie bros are dividing us, and you know, Russians are coming in and dividing us. They don't need to do shit.
No.
TV news will do it for them.
Yeah.
They
that
will
is true.
do it because they just their business model is just to encourage as many clicks as possible. And honestly, sometimes I feel bad for the reporters and the journalists that work there because
Yeah.
everything that I hear is that the heads of these companies are just like, if you don't increase engagement in perpetuity, you're fired.
Mike wants to know what news sources you recommend besides City Paper.
It's hard. I don't know. This is the problem. Obviously, follow City Paper. I think the
I
Post
read-
Gazette does a good job, except for their editorial section. Ignore their editorial section. It's a joke. There's no reason to. It's run by Burris. It's, you know, just ignore it. We have plenty of opinion in this country. We do not need the Post Gazette to weigh in on
Okay, but
especially
let's
things of national
let's
importance.
go larger.
I mean, Trib. You know, Megan Guzza is a really good reporter for the Trib, and she covers crime in the area. And
no,
she
I
always
mean
does
not local.
Oh God. You mean
Yeah,
generally?
so you're telling people don't watch CNN.
Right,
so,
right.
okay, so
I
where
read
are
a lot of Vox for a lot of my stuff, and you know, some lefties might be like, "Oh, Vox is neoliberal shit, whatever." But it's really informative, and they do a really good job of especially for national politics. I think of informing you about policies, breaking things down. They have a lot of explainers that make it really easy for you to understand.
Don't you think the Washington Post does a pretty good job?
Yeah, I do. I
I
but
mean-
sometimes they weigh into that same
I know,
stuff.
but nowhere near like the New York Times.
Right.
New York Times makes me insane.
Right. There's a lot of
The
really
Post
bad,
is-
especially their political stuff. I would say like New York Times business stuff is pretty good.
Yeah,
but
but
again,
their political
this is
stuff
what's so hard is that
sucks.
everything is so fractured. Is that yeah, I could give people a list of what I read to stay informed, and people could follow that, but it's so hard because there's going to be so many things flooding into your feed that you're gonna go, oh yeah, let's do that. It's again, it's impossible. It's the truly David and Goliath. It's 1 versus a million. It's so difficult, but yeah.
But if you want to know, at
I'm
magazines
being
I watch,
depressed.
I like the Atlantic.
Yeah, but again, sometimes they print really bad things.
Well, yeah,
David
but-
Frum has printed the worst immigration takes I've ever read, and they're in the Atlantic. They're awful. And they're framed in this way that isn't like Tucker Carlson, which is like obviously white nationalist, right? But it's framed in this like moderate way of like, oh no, listen to me. No, his takes are terrible. He gets facts wrong all the time about who comes in this country, about how many things. So it's tough. It's I would say don't read David Frum. I'll say that on the
Okay,
Atlantic. Don't
all
read
right,
David
fine.
Frum. I think for political stuff, I think Dave Weigel's a really good follow for the Washington Post. He seems to. He has a really good sense of humor, which I think is really nice in these things.
Yeah.
I think Matt Pierce from the LA Times does a really good job. It's
You know what? You gotta go out
really
there.
hard.
I know.
Really, what we need is a list of flaggers of who not to. Don't read Chris Cazilla or Cazilla
No,
from
don't-
CNN.
yeah,
Honestly,
Chris
stop reading CNN.
Cazilla, or what is it?
Yeah,
Chris-
Cazilla. I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
Yeah,
I'm assuming it's
is,
Cazilla.
Yeah, awful,
Terrible.
beyond awful.
I mean, awful.
Yeah.
Just useless, basically, and yet has this huge
Chris
platform.
Cazilla.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool name though. Cool last name.
No, there's so many. Just.
So yeah, it is really hard. I think this is why I hark on this to anyone who will listen. But it's all about education, right?
Yeah.
Like everything is about education.
Also, media literacy.
Yeah,
You want to
but that
be
only comes-
educated
that
in this in this time.
But we can't do media literacy after the fact. It needs to happen in higher education.
It
needs
has
to happen
start
in
in
high
kindergarten.
school. It has to start
No,
in.
it
It probably has to start
it
in.
started
Yeah.
in preschool.
Yeah.
I mean, from the time my kid was first starting to watch TV, I was always pointing out to him.
Right. What's what?
Yeah. That's a commercial. People are trying to get you to.
Right?
Really?
No, you're totally right.
No,
because
And
think
if
of
you
the influence commercials have on us. Why do we buy more SUVs? No, seriously, why are we buying more SUVs in this country? And we don't have to
He
get in.
finally got around to transportation.
got in the cars. But no. But I mean, seriously, like most people aren't hauling like
Families of 10.
Yeah,
and,
no, I mean even that. A minivan does that, and so they're not hauling boats and all these
No,
other
but it's
things
what's
that you
being
need.
pushed at
and so
them
you have to
as-
think about
right.
advertisement. Car companies are pushing SUVs, and that's the reason why we buy more SUVs. Not because we need them, not because they're better for the environment. They're obviously not, and they also kill
But
more
think
pedestrians.
of all the people who let their kids take this stuff in,
Right.
and
And
they don't say to them, "You
That's a
understand
commercial.
what they're doing
They're
right
selling
now.
to you.
You need to be
on the defense.
playing defense
Skeptical.
all the time. If you want, and it's interesting. My son, as a young man, is so smart about this stuff.
That's
now.
great.
But I maybe cared about it more because I was in
Right.
media.
Same with me, obviously.
Yeah, okay. So we know, and I was in television.
Right.
So I knew the tricks,
Right.
the manipulation,
Right. And so
what was left out, what was, and how promotion of a story. I remember there were times when I would see a promotion for a story that I was doing on the news, and it was totally not what it was maybe even the opposite of what my story
Just like
was.
that WPXI tweet. I could
Exactly
guarantee. I know
right.
the reporter that worked on that. He's
Okay.
a really good reporter. He's a good
Okay,
TV
so
reporter,
what
but I
that
guarantee
is
that got
was
manipulated.
somebody wanting to sell it.
Right. And I do not fault the journalist who wrote that. because I think he's a really good writer. I think he's done a lot of really good stuff. And I think what happened is he had this idea, and then
Tell me who the good reporter is.
Aaron Martin for
I don't watch a
WPXI.
lot
Oh
of
yeah, sorry.
local
Aaron
news.
Martin is good. He's measured. He's smart. He does a lot of right things, I think, and so he deserves praise. But I think what happened with that
Well,
story,
sure. What happened is the promo
Right.
people,
frame it in a way. How can we get this like nuanced story about crime stats and development to get clicks? And so they go, let's make it racist. Like that's exactly what
Okay, well,
happened.
I just want to say for everybody who has small children in your life, do that for them. Will you
Right.
please arm them?
But it's hard because I don't know if parents are equipped. That's the problem.
Because they were never armed.
Right. And so this is why I really think we need better, more rigorous education. This is why I'm probably I'm a really big proponent of free college, is because I get that not everybody's path is through college, right? And there are people who are going to become tradesmen, they're going to become welders, they're going to become nurses, and that's great. We need those in society. But I do not believe that we as a country should say, well, if you're going to be a nurse or if you're going to be a welder, you don't need to learn anything about the humanities, because that's the only way I learned about this stuff. Like, all this critical thinking was going through the humanities, was reading history, was reading philosophy.
But even
was these
in
other things.
universities and colleges, the humanities are disappearing.
Yeah, because
they can't be monetized. I mean, so
Right. That's
if
why
you-
it needs to be free. This is what I'm saying, is that this is why it needs to
Why
be
are
free.
you wasting your time learning about Russian literature?
That's what everyone says, right? Is that, it doesn't equate to a job. Everything is monetized. And so that's why student debt is so high, is because these administrators are making millions of dollars a year. It's all about just increasing tuition. It's a factory, basically, of like, here's a phony degree, right? Or it's not that phony, but it's becoming more and more so, right? And then here's your degree and all these things. But if you made it free, that would totally break that system. It would break the system down.
Somebody sent me a letter. I wrote a young girl. She sent it to me. Now she's an old woman. She's a middle-aged woman, but she found it, and
Everyone's young to Lynn.
She had sent me a letter saying, I want to be a journalist like you.
Right.
How do I do that? And I read the letter I sent her, typed on a typewriter, my
Nice,
2-page
yeah.
letter. And I didn't say about going to journalism school. I
Right.
talked about get the broadest education you can.
Right.
I mean, find out if you really like news.
Right.
Read the newspaper every day.
Every day.
Read your family's magazines and every day, and see if that's something that you really love. And also, know things about economics, sociology, all the things, psychology.
How do we get that educated? The only way is through higher education. The only way is through higher education, and obviously more rigorous high school as well, and all these things. We need those things. That's the only way I see us becoming more media literate. And this age of when media literacy is like so important, because it's
There's
becoming
no
so
class
fractured.
on media literacy.
But you need more than a class. You're right. You need to be broadly
it needs to
educated
be like,
on
don't they have
everything.
English every year that you're in
Right.
grade school?
Right.
Media literacy.
Right,
needs to be
right.
there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there should be media literacy, but this is what makes it so sad, is
See,
because
media literacy is also like critical thinking, though.
that's exactly what it is.
Well, yes, exactly. So all of that. Thinking for yourself,
But
not
how do we get-
abdicating your brain, your eyes, your ears to some buddy.
right. And how do we encourage? There are some people who are just born with the critical thinking, no matter what profession they go into. They're born with critical thought, and they just have it. But how do we encourage more people to get this? This is why I think it's so stupid, especially when Democrats go, oh, we need to just advocate workforce training, all these things. Workforce training is great, but it should be tied to humanities education. It should be tied to history. Like, you can't just go take. Yes, you can go take a year of welding class and then get a good welding job and start a family and do all those things. But when media comes, when politics, which is all through the media, comes, you are not equipped. You are not equipped to deal with the lies that people like President Trump say on a daily basis. You're not equipped. And so we say all these things like, oh, we just need to get people jobs. We are the richest country in the history of the world. We need to educate people more. We used to be the beacon of every other country in the world. Was like, man, Americans are educated. They know what is going on over there. And now we've totally dropped that off.
Yeah.
We've dropped it off, or we're still educated, but every other country is just outcompeting us at this point. So we need more education. And that's really what my biggest thing is. And it's sad when people go, oh, no, I don't know. No, you don't need to go to college. That's a scam. Why do you not want your kid to go to college? Why do you not want your kid to become smarter? It doesn't make any sense. Why is the only thing that people want, oh, I just want them to get a good job? That is feeding Republicans. I'm sorry. It's feeding Trumpism, because it's we want you well paid and low educated so that we can manipulate you constantly. I'm sorry. I know.
Take a deep breath. And,
I'm so scared.
I feel for you. Sometimes it's good to be as old as I am.
Right. Yeah.
It's my birthday Saturday.
It's my birthday tomorrow. Same birthday weekend.
We share it with Dr. King.
That's right. Yeah.
That's cool.
I know. I missed it by a day.
How old are you going to be?
33.
Wow. He's getting up there.
Yeah.
I'm, Jesus, almost 40 years older.
Almost 40? Is that it?
I'm almost 40 years older than you. I'll be 72.
Oh, congratulations. That's a good age. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope
Take
to,
care
hope
of
to get there
yourself,
one
and
day.
you can be there too. Get that tooth taken care of.
That's
okay,
number one.
We're done.
We're done.
We are done. And I want to, and you should know this. Derek Hughes, this amazing magician.
Hey, magic.
Is coming. He's going to be right here.
Oh, cool.
Tomorrow
Right.
at 10.
Perfect.
And he's going to do some stuff, and he's mind blowing.
That's why we got the video. People can watch, because that'll be fun.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mind blowing.
Yeah.
Okay?
Cool.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.